Oh, there I see you, Crystal. Thank you for sharing your lovely face. I do appreciate it. Thank you. Um, Danny, you can go ahead and turn off your camera. It's okay. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, we appreciate seeing you too. Arthur, okay, I get it, Arthur. Um, thank you. Thank you all for coming. We're recording on this one here. I'm sorry, those of you in the audience in here, I don't have that facing you, but that's as good as I can get it. Okay. So we're going to go over the docs. I've done a ton of training and multiple calls to the DRE on this, and I think I've got it pretty simplified at this point to what we have to do and what we can ignore, or what at least is enough of a specialty case that we don't always have to address it today. Okay. Basically, there are four encounters that seem to handle the majority of the times that we deal with it. And those encounters are when we have a buyer, when we have an offer, when we have a listing, and when we have an open house. So there's those four different times, okay, that we have to deal with them. And to start with, the most common form, the one that the agents are going to want to use the most because it provides them the best protection in dealing with a client, is the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. It's a 4-page document that goes through basically the broadest terms that in those situations allows the agent to represent the client in the greatest amount of opportunities. So if you just look at the form here, I've got it on my screen for you guys. I can see Fernando and Kelly that we have here have some of the docs out in front of them. It's the one that says right up at the top, buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. And it's pretty simple. You put in the date, you put in the name of the buyer, you put in Remax Desert Properties. I'd probably say possibly even my name there, but you don't have to. If you think about it, if you say just Remax Desert Properties, if you ever have to turn to another agent and ask for their assistance, so long as they work at Remax Desert Properties, you're covered. Okay, so I would probably just put Remax Desert Properties there. If you look in section A, okay, we have a beginning and an end date. It cannot be more than 3 months. Okay, but 3 months is not 90 days. If 3 months is only 90 days, if the month of February is in the middle of January and March. Other than that, every other time period will be either 91 or 92 days. Okay, and it is a small but important point, because if you are getting near the end of your agreement and you take your people out and show them a house, and they realize that you've only got the length of the weekend in order to represent them, some buyers may decide, well, why don't I just come back and make an offer on this house on Monday to the listing agent, and then I don't have to deal with my agent. I wasn't that in love with them anyways. You follow me with what I'm describing there? I wish I could tell you it was a perfect world and that every buyer is going to love you from the moment they meet you until the moment they close. But I would really encourage you to pick the 92 days here, because even if your client does love you, is there a chance that they run into a charismatic, good looking, sweet talking agent out there who meets them at an open house? And that agent says, well, are you operating under a buyer broker agreement? Well, yes, I am, they say. How long you been in it? Almost 3 months now. What's that agent going to think in their head? Well, if they're almost 3 months, maybe I just give it a couple days and then I follow up with this client. Folks, you should do my sign-in sheet over here and just make sure and put your information and the name of your agent so we can make sure and keep them in the loop. But then they wait 5 days and they call or email that client. just gambling that your agreement has expired. I know none of you guys would do it, but there might be agents out there who would. So really pick the whole 92 days there, or 92 days or 3 months. Just be careful of your end date on it so you can get as much as you can. And when you get into your final month, do an extension. If you're working good with your people, say, I know we haven't hit it right now. I've got you on a lot of automated settings, okay, for showing you properties. I'd like to continue in that. What do you think we do an extension on it so we can go at, not have it end in September, but have it go through the end of the year? We're close to it. I would think that that was a very wise move on the path of a forward-thinking agent, knowing that their client may not be coming back to the desert until October. What is that form? That form is the buyer broker agreement. Oh, but then you do an extension. There is a modification form that's right here, modification of terms, buyer representation agreement. It's a single document, very similar to the modification of terms that's done for modifying a listing agreement. And that there, but you just put in now the expiration date is changed too. And you just pick no more than 3 months from the date that your other document expired. I would discourage you from going into this like right in your first week and having him sign up for a 6 month and using this as that. I think that there is possibly to be some legal challenges and commission mediation and arbitration that's going to happen through the local board in the year ahead. And I believe the most defendable position is to be that you gave them a reasonable amount of time and provided them adequate service and then asked for it. But I'll leave those types of decisions up to you. I'm not giving a hard and fast law that we have to follow, just my best suggestion. So let's go back to the buyer broker agreement, buyer representation agreement. Notice after that, on section B here, B1, B2, B3, okay, that's where you're going to describe what it is that you're going to show them. I would recommend as often as possible, okay, you do not check single family residence here because that would exclude it from this agreement. But you might want to check these other types that are there so that they can be included. If it was just a single property, you could put it here, the following specified properties, if it was 1 or 2 or something like that. Although I'm going to show you a different form that's called the property showing form here in just a minute. If it's really down to that limit of properties, you're probably going to want to use it. I would be more likely to say location, Riverside County, or Coachella Valley. Okay. If it includes the high desert, make sure and say that. Or even put in like 10 or 15 cities, into this location here. But I would try to keep this as broad as possible. So if they switch from one city to the other, or from one type of single family home to a condo, that you're covered in all instances. So there's no wiggle room. The broader you make this, the more you are protected. Additional description, of course, if you have it there, have to have a casita, whatever. But again, I would keep this document as broad as possible and not try to narrow it down on this. Some people are going to want you to. Some educated buyers are going to, they might have you shopping for them a condo and somebody else shopping for them a manufactured home, a third person shopping for a single family home. They might try to do that, or you looking at Cathedral City and somebody else looking in La Quinta, whatever it is. But the broader you can make it, the more you are protected as an agent. And the more you can honestly help your client if you stumble across something that doesn't fit their original intent, but you think they might like it. Now, here's the one that everybody, oh, I'm sorry, before we'll do section D, properties excluded from representation. Early on in your meeting the client, you are to ask them, are you working with anybody? Very common question we've asked in the past, but you're going to want to ask it even more so now. Because if they are, you want to know, did they already sign an agreement with that person? What's their relationship with this agent? If they say they did, you're probably going to want to ask to see the agreement that they signed. Okay, because whatever is the exclusion, you should be honest with them at the time you're having them sign this. Oh, I see you're already working with somebody else to find golf course condos in Palm Desert, and you're asking me to find you a single family home in South Palm Desert. Okay, I get it. You'll probably still take that client so long as everybody's on the up and up with each other, but you may want to ask them which one they really want, and you definitely, we want to keep ourselves out of disputes as much as possible. So if there is an exclusion, you want to include it in that line. Now let's move on to section E. This is the one that everybody is interested in. The amount of compensation. The agent, in my opinion, should be asking for 3%. If they have to do 2.5%, I understand. Some of us have gotten comfortable, okay, with the 2.5%. I think we're going to begin to see agents advertising that they will work for 2% or 1% or even a flat fee. I mean, the thought that somebody is going to say, I'll find you the home you want for $99.99. Okay. I think that is highly probable. However, whatever you think you're worth, this is where you want to put it, is right in this box. And I am also hearing plenty of agents already telling me that they're not going below 3%. And that's just their price. Now, and you put it in here and you'll notice this one here, see attached compensation schedule. I've also had some conversation about agents that may want to work for different amounts depending on the prices of the property or depending on how the commission is being paid. Okay. And speaking of agent commission being paid and how it's being paid on this here, right here is where most buyers are going to have that. Well, I don't want to be responsible for that. I don't mind hiring you, but I can't pay nothing unless it's paid by the seller. Okay. That's a little different than all the alternatives that are out there because one alternative is paid by the seller. But let me ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what if it was the home you loved and the seller wouldn't pay it, but it fit under my agreement with you because I personally want to find you the home you love, no matter what the compensation looks like. Although I'm not giving away my money here, I'm just saying I don't want to limit what I can show you and have you love because that's what I want to achieve here. In that scenario, if the seller still wasn't going to pay, would it be fair if we looked at rolling into the financing? Well, maybe. Okay. What does that look like? Well, if it was a $500,000 house, and that's the price that we were negotiated, and my commission was due, and what was owed on the difference between what the seller wanted to pay and what you were obligated to was $5,000, would you let the price be $505,000 for my portion? A little bit of a difficult conversation, but a very honest one. Okay, with your buyer. And then, well, maybe, oh, okay, but let me just go on one more second here. You see this box down in buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay broker down at the bottom of the form? We can check that. And that does not forbid us from looking at the possibility of you rolling it into the finance. So if you want to protect yourself and not having to come up with cash, which I can understand, we can check that box and we can still get my commission paid and I can still show you every property that's out there. We'll really work hard to find you the one you love. And worst case scenario, we finance the portion that my broker is due. Try to put it in me. I use my commission a couple times, but if you're speaking to the client, say my broker's percentage or something like that, put it on me because I won't be at the table and it'll help you to save face when you're with the client. Follow me, everybody? Okay. I'm getting a little head nods here too. Okay. payments received by broker from seller or others. Also, if the broker receives compensation from seller or others for broker's representation of buyer, the amount shall be credited against buyer's obligation. This is written in there to protect you. It could be some, it could be all. And I'm going to do everything I can to negotiate it into the all column. And whatever is there, it's going to be credited in your favor. Fair enough? Most people say fair enough to that. Okay. This section here, section E, the continuation period. This is the part that we fill in. Okay. This is the part that you fill in. Let's say you've come to the end of the term of your agreement and they do not want to extend it. And you've shown them 5 or 10 homes in the 92 days that you had on your buyer broker agreement. I always put 365 days in that blank box. Okay, I've had agents who have only put a week, agents who have only put a month. Every contract I've ever written, I've given myself 1 year of protection. If I show you that property, I'm owed a commission on that transaction for 1 year. I've only had one client who argued against it and made me reduce it to 90 days. Everybody else just said, oh yeah, okay. So you put whatever you want, but that's it. And then notice that the cancellation rights and notice, okay, you have the difference between non-exclusive and exclusive. And this is a very important difference. The non-exclusive means that other people can show them properties during the same period. They are not exclusive to you. Okay. The exclusive means that they are exclusive to you. Also, the non-exclusive means that they can cancel the agreement anytime it's effective upon receipt, or you can check the box and fill in how many days after receipt that you have some gravy period that you are protected on. It's up to you. I mean, I would want at least 30 days after receipt, even if I did it. Okay, would be my suggestion until it goes into effect. And believe me that even after the 30 days, okay, you still have the continued right to payments. I believe. I'll have to read more on that, but I believe so. The cancellation means that the cancellation does not even go to effect until 30 days after receipt, automatically. And exclusive is the one that everybody wants. We all want a 90-day exclusive agreement or 92-day exclusive agreement to represent our clients, to give us the maximum amount of time to find them a property, okay, and to get the deal done. Because you may need to do an extension if you're in escrow, okay, and it goes beyond the 90 days. Now, actually, no, this one here, time deliver buyer personal financial information. This one here, I've gone back and forth on recently about whether or not it's mandatory, but the final decision or the most recent decision that I've gotten from a car legal attorney is that it is mandatory that this be gotten on every buyer who signs this form within 5 days after the execution of this agreement, unless somebody signs an extension there. You can write 10 or 30 or whatever you want on that. Okay, but the default is 5 days. You're to fill out and they are to sign a form BFPI, which is buyer personal financial information. Okay, and basically what it is a discovery of how they're going to pay for the home and can they provide proof of funds and a pre-qual letter and where's the money at and how much of it are they going to put down and all of those types of questions. Okay, it is a mandatory form. Okay, and then last thing is other financial considerations. We went over that. Buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay broker, or buyer intends to purchase with the following loan product, which does not allow buyer to pay compensation to broker. That one there would come in. The only loan product I know right now that fits in that is a VA no-no loan. If possibly any VA loan. Okay, but if it's one of those or a Cal VA, they don't allow commissions to buyer's agents, or commissions to any agent. I believe a law will come forward on that in the next year, the next 6 months, to make a modification, because right now I see a loophole in how this works, that veterans are going to find it hard to get representation. Okay? But that's the way the law is right now. Other terms, if there's anything else special that you want to put in. And then after that, it's what we've gone through on, it's all the small print, I should say. But I want to also talk about here real quick, this section B4, I'd say 4B4 on page 2, that's near the top. Broker involvement. This is where it defines how an agent can justify their commission. Okay, because to sign somebody up is a big step. But even after you sign them up, you will be probably ruled against if there is a challenge to your commission if you have not done one of these handful of things. Buyer physically entered and was shown the property by broker. So if you walk somebody into the home, you're owed a commission if they buy it. If the broker showed the property to buyer virtually, many of us have done FaceTime or YouTube videos, something like that with it. That still qualifies as showing them the home. Broker submitted to seller a signed written offer from buyer to acquire. Okay, so if you write an offer, you are owed a commission. Broker performed a market analysis related to the property or reviewed property specific documents or disclosures. Okay, so this one here is to me probably the lowest bar, okay, of the criteria to qualify for your commission. Because if I were the agent, I'll tell you, when I had that conversation with the buyer, and maybe I sent them 5 or 10 or 20 properties, okay, to think about, they're coming out this next weekend to look at homes. If they reply that they like them, whichever ones they are, I would then prepare a CMA for them on every one of those properties. So that, heaven forbid, they come out and see you on Saturday and then Sunday go out on their own and write an offer on something that you've shown them and walked them through. And then they buy through the other agent. At that point, I'd probably file with the local board and say, no, I can prove emails and communication with him. I can show a signed buyer broker agreement. I can show my super box opened that home the day before. And not only that, I can show that I prepared him a CMA. And even if all you did was email them the CMA, somebody could try to argue, look, I was working with that client. And the last one is the property was introduced to buyer by broker, or one for which broker acted on buyer's behalf. However, merely sending buyer a list of properties shall not be deemed broker involvement without documented action on the part of broker analyzing the property for buyer. So again, justifying the CMA on that one there. So those are the rules right there for how we earn our commission. And that was thrown into the mix for all this because in the settlement, it was complained that many agents work for a buyer and do nothing, and the buyer don't even like their house, and the seller and the agent gets paid a commission, and the buyer's stuck with a pig in a poke. So these rules are put in order to defend the buyer. They actually had an agent who worked for them. Okay, so that's the meat and potatoes of the buyer broker agreement. But then I want to show you one more thing. If you sign an exclusive representation, you have to also get the buyer to initial this box 15 on the last page of the contract, just right above their signatures. So they are doubly verifying that you are their agent. Okay. You also have to put in the confirmation of compensation. So they get, again, what they owe you. You're their agent and they owe you X amount or X percentage. And then they sign right underneath it. Well, 15 is the box where you they confirm that you are under exclusive representation. and 16, they fill in the amount of the purchase or amount of the percentage. Sorry. It's very important to do that because at some point in your negotiations on the house that they love, you're going to reach a point, hopefully, where you and the listing agent are in agreement on the price. The buyer and the seller agree on the negotiations. You guys have agreed, whether you like it or not, what the percentage is. You've reached some sort of settlement. Okay, they're going to pay 2%. My buyer owes 2.5%. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you owe me 0.5%. We're going to finance that on top of the price, or they're going to add it to their closing cost, whatever they want to do on that there. You need to have this part signed because the other agent and escrow are going to ask for a copy of this page. Well, we need to know for sure if we're going to pay 2.5% or 2% or whatever, 3%, whatever is agreed to. They're going to say, we want to know for sure that it's going to where you're saying it's going to go. This is the page you're going to show them. I would encourage you to not share your entire buyer broker agreement with the party that you are negotiating with, because you're going to right away take one plank out of their argument, about what's fair with something, and they may just decide to shaft you. Whatever. We don't care. But this is the page. If you're giving it to escrow, because they're going to need this too, escrow could see the whole doc. Okay, if you wanted to, although escrow may just acquire or require this last page. Where'd it go? There we go. But any questions on the buyer broker agreement? Yes, you over there in the red shirt. Okay. Carmen here is telling me that when Ricardo, her partner, is out showing homes, before they'll even let them see the home. Wow, I see. I don't think that's right. Well, did they ask for it to merely give them a code to go into the home, or did they ask for it with the purchase offer? Oh, with the purchase. With the purchase offer, I can understand. It's probably going to become standard routine to provide that page with your purchase offer. I would think, much like providing proof of funds or a pre-qual, it's a component of it. They just want to know that it's all real. So that's probably not so bad. I was hesitant a week or two ago to say yes to that, but I think I'm already getting more comfortable with it. Yeah. We'll do the same thing then. If that's what becomes the new standard, we'll be doing the same thing when we're on the listing side. Yeah. How about you out there in Zoom land? Crystal or Danny or Arthur, anybody? Questions out there? No? Okay. Moving on then. The short form for this here, because that's the best form that we all want. Here we go. Property showing and representation agreement. This is the short form. This one here is a 30-day form that's designed for up to 3 properties. I like to use this for somebody. You get a phone call from an internet lead. Okay. You're probably going to use this form, because before you show anybody any property that is not your listing, you have to have a form signed. So either the buyer broker agreement or this agreement. If it is your listing, you do not have to. But you do want to be clear with the buyers that you are showing your own listing and you are not representing them. If you wanted to, you could use the open house visitor and non-agent signing thing in order to just tell them that. I'm trying to see if I have that. I don't have that right here in front of me right now. But we'll come back to that one here in a minute. if we do it. But this is the short form. This is really just well, 2 pages, and then the signature crawls onto the third. But it's a much shorter form for it. Notice that this one here does not allow them out. That buyer does not have the money to pay the buyer's broker. That paragraph is missing from this here. So if they want to have that out, they have to sign the longer form. This one here, they are obligated to you for a percentage of the acquisition price or anything else, okay, if applicable. I would actually want to check this or bonus, and I'd write in the word bonus if applicable. It's rare, but if I know the properties in particular, sometimes it'll say that there's a bonus on the properties on that there. I'd want to be eligible for the bonus.
What's the notice on
Which one? It should be. It's called the property showing. Let's see here.
That's not.
No, you don't have it either, Kelly? Well, I must have missed it. Here. Let's print this one. We shall print out some fresh copies. It'll just take 1 second. Or as Rob Schneider once said, making copies. Here we are. The copy man. Hanging out. Hopefully we'll get the little pop-up that lets me know it's really happening. Probably come here any hour or two. There we go. We'll hear that start up in 1 second. But until then, we just talk about it up here. You can see you've got the buyer's name, the broker's name, you identify the properties that they want. If they absolutely only wanted to sign this form with you on that there, you could do 2. You do more than 3 properties, okay, on it, and you can put together a little route for them. You'll be on that if need be. Wonder why that isn't printing. Didn't that say Indian Wells when I told it to print? Um, hey guys, I don't know why, but I'm probably gonna need to continue the Zoom on this here. Running really slow there for some reason. Okay, hopefully that'll work. If not, I'll just have to do it here on the screen. We'll work our way through it. So we got the buyer's name, the broker's name, the addresses of the properties. Show or tour the homes. Okay, so we're going to show them. Even if you're going to go shoot them a video or do a FaceTime, you want to do this. I would imagine that, again, we started talking with this one here. You get a phone call on an internet lead that says they really want to see this home. I would put this form on the hood of my car and ask them to sign it before I walked in the front door. Okay. You get a walk-in. I mean, some of you will do a floor time here at the office or, in Palm Springs, occasionally we'll get somebody in. You'll meet them. They want to go out and see a condo. They've had a great winter here and they're thinking about in the spring, maybe we should buy. Happy to do it for you, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. But you gotta sign this so we can go do it. Beginning date, not to exceed 30 days. So not even a full month in February. Or no, it's a full month, but not on the 31-day month. So I guess January, March, whatever. Okay. October, July, December. But this one is only for 30 days or upon completion of a resulting transaction. So this one, if you go into escrow, you don't need to get an extension. Okay. The amount of compensation. Now, since it is so direct about the properties, I would probably call the other agent to see what that is if I have time. So I know going into it what the scenario is. What I don't want to do though is allow that information so I don't show a home. I'm not going to nix any home off the buyer's list. Okay. If the buyer wants to talk about that at some point, but I'm just going to know for my own conversation, maybe while we're in the home, if they say they like it, I might bring it up at that point. But what we're supposed to not do is allow the commission to direct whether or not we show a home to a buyer. I think we all have thought about that at some point in the past when we see a flat 1% or a 2%, and we think our bottom line should be 2.5 or 3. That's part of the reason for the lawsuit. So we cannot let that information affect us on this. Some agents and some brokers are saying, don't even ask. Just go show the home, figure it out once you know whether or not they like it. Get the buyer to sign this form, and in an ideal world, that's how it should be. Okay, but oftentimes we're working in less than perfect scenarios. Okay, so again, it says if broker receives compensation from seller or others, that it'll fulfill the buyer's obligation to pay the broker. And this is an important one here, but this is also in the last form in the small print, but I forgot to mention it. Brokers shall not receive any amount in excess of paragraph 4B1. So whatever you put in this section right here, you cannot get paid more than that. So if you agree you're going to show it for 2% and they're willing to pay 3%, you cannot collect that extra 1%. I have had some agents say to me, well, what if I ask the buyers to sign a new one at that point? My answer is, ethically, are we watching out for the buyer's best fiduciary interest if we ask them to do that? And I would think it would be easily argued no, that we are not. I would think that we are in the buyer's best fiduciary interest at that point to say, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I know that you agreed to only pay me a 2% commission, but they're offering a 3% commission. And whether they say yes or no, that's not the purpose of me saying that. No, 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 Mrs. Johnson, that's not where Mr. Johnson, that's not what I meant this to be. I think we should go back and offer them 1% less and make sure that we got that 1% from them. Now, if we've already shown them our commission, I'll have probably brought it up with the listing agent on the other end, but I'm going to do everything I can to negotiate the best deal for my client under whatever terms that I agreed to work for them. And if I see that error, rather than going back and trying to recoup it for me with them, I believe the most ethical thing is to go back and argue on the client's behalf and see if you can get it for them. So I'm not sure every broker, every agent in the world will do that, but I believe that 1% will get you far greater repeat clients and cheerleaders out there in the world for how great a agent you are, rather than the 1% extra. Not really legal. First off, you should split it with your broker. Fernando asked, what if the buyer wants to give you a bonus? And so I'm like, yeah, not really legal on that there. Actually, I shouldn't say it probably is legal, but it should have been negotiated into the contract at the beginning of the form, right? Because there was a spot in there for that. And if so, that should be negotiated in. And then it would be entirely legal. Otherwise, if it's not negotiated in somewhere else, it could be argued down the road when a buyer might have buyer's remorse. Hey, Eric made me pay him an extra $1,000 at the end too. That was a bunch of BS. Even though they totally offered, right? But it's only me and them in the room. And the only evidence left is that check. At that point there, they can claim whatever they want down the road, and I'm going to have egg on my face. So I would really encourage to not take it. Okay. Cancellation rights. Okay, just like on the other one, effective, well, not exactly. The other one was you could have up to 30 days on the cancel item. This one here is effective upon receipt or blank days after receipt. So if you don't have any other protection, right? They could go look at the home, write the other agent's phone number down, thank you for showing it to them, cancel the agreement on the way away, call the other agent and write the offer. Unless you've got some sort of protection here that's within it. So I really encourage you on this form here, get yourself some protection. As we go through, we're going to look and see if it has a grace period like the other form. But I just don't recall. I would always want some sort of receipt there because honestly, the position I want my clients to be in, not that they're going to love hearing this, but I want them to know that they're obligated to me. And if they try to go around me, they legally are supposed to wait a certain amount of days, which means that home might sell to somebody else. Is if that other agent is honest, and if they're honest, I will be disclosed to them. No, I'm supposed to write through them. I just wanted to know that if I was gonna get a better deal if I went to you, and you were gonna double end it. You know, a client could get that hangdog look and feel on their face if they have a conscience.
How many days?
I'd put 30. You know, on an agreement like this, since it's a 30-day agreement, I'd put 30 days on it. Yeah. It's supposed to be a shorter term agreement. So payments for others less than prospective buyer obligation. That says that the buyer is obligated to it. Like the buyer may cancel the agreement, right? The other within the time frame, broker shall be entitled if during representation, where a prospective buyer acquires property for which there was broker record, right? The written list. So, and this is one too, which I did not talk about yet, but we'll talk about here while I got. When your agreement reaches its end, whether it's the buyer broker agreement or this shorter one, the showing property agreement or property showing agreement on it, you have to provide a list of the properties that you feel your client owes you a commission on to them. There is a form on it that's called Notice of Broker Involved Properties, the NBIP on it, which I think this even refers to somewhere. There it is, NBIP. Okay. And you have 5 days from the effective date of cancellation to give them that, and that begins your cancellation period. And buyers prospective is advised to notify any other broker's rights under this broker authorization. So we have to diligently represent prospective buyers attending an open house without representation. It's telling them that they do not have to sign a representation agreement at an open house, and telling that if they have signed a representation agreement, that they should inform the broker of any other property if they see it, that they are under some form of a written agreement. And then they sign it. Okay, so on every buyer, before you show them a home, one of those two documents, the buyer representation agreement or the property showing agreement, on every one. And on the buyer representation agreement, if they sign that within 5 days, we have to do the buyer preferences, financing preferences and information form. Not there. Okay, and on these forms, I'm not asking them to be uploaded to SkySlope. I don't want to see every buyer broker agreement on every buyer that you ever go show a home to. However, if I get a phone call and there's an incident, okay, where a buyer is alleging some complaint and you cannot produce your documentation, we will lose in whatever the fight is, and you will end up paying absolutely, and probably E&O will not pay for it. So I encourage you to be diligent on retaining your docs and following the law. Also, if heaven forbid a secret shopper should come around from the Department of Justice or the plaintiffs or the DRE, you could you could violate and void your portion of the settlement agreement, and you could be responsible, I think it's for 7 years of buyer's agent commissions. And your protection is gone. So whatever was your volume of business that you did for the length of time that the lawsuit covered, you could be asked to pony up that. Yes, yes, E&O, yes. I would bet that E&O is going to start hitting me up for that. We may not have it by the end of this year, but I would not be surprised. I understand. I do. And it may stay that way. But either we're going to get, believe me, there's going to be somebody who starts trying to sell us insurance, okay, on this here. If there's legal documentation involved with it, whether it's in, no, well, I don't know exactly how that piece fits right now, but I would not be surprised to find somewhere in the near future that suddenly either that's an addendum on my E&O or it's an extra cost or whatever. But I would bet that this is going to come about. And if we have to document when our relationship begins with people, somebody's going to file a lawsuit on that, and some insurance salesman is going to say, "Ooh, we should be selling policies on that." So I think it'll be part of the change that we all deal with in the months or years ahead. Okay, how about out there? Crystal, Arthur, anything? You got all this, right? Okay. Moving on. Trying to, I can't click on my screen. I've got a, there we go. Okay, so the buyer financial and personal information, this is the second one that goes along with the buyer representation agreement, okay, which is basically a discovery. And this is within 5 days of doing the buyer broker agreement that you have to do this here. It's amount of deposit, amount of down payment, sources, where's your money coming from, what's your loan amount, what's your lender information, blah, 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 blah. All of those that goes with it. My one area that I would tell you that you really need to be fair with this form. Make sure that when you're doing this, don't only do it on one demographic of client. Make sure that you are fair with whites, blacks, women, men, Jews, Catholics, handicapped and aged and 18-year-olds. Okay. You don't want to ever be accused of not being an equal housing opportunist for everybody out there. And this is a form that would probably play right into that type of consideration. We're just going to go, we're not going to do it for Cubans or men. That's it. Those are Cuban men, I think, are the only ones. Cuban bisexual men. Yes, that's it. Just be fair, okay, with this here, because this is exactly the form that would be used against you to try to prove. I didn't do that one either? No. Okay, well, I'm sorry. And I don't know what happened with the printer because it did not print out for me. That's probably Anastasia if you did that. It's a discovery form is what it is. All it does is do that. And then I would think that since this has to be within 5 days, this is a perfect form to fill out on a follow-up phone call with them. Hey, I just want to make sure I've got this one form that I have to do. And I know that when we find the right home, the seller is going to ask me this information too. So I need to put on my salesman hat and ask you a couple questions. You got a minute? Yeah, okay. I got to ask you about how you're going to pay for it. And just go right down the list. Would put there's a spot for the lender. Take the pre-qual letter, absolutely. Save it as a PDF in your computer or print it and put it in your file. Yeah, I think it is, yeah. Well, they do have pre-qualification, pre-approved, fully underwritten pre-approval. So on that there, and they check like the type of loan that they're looking to do. And I would think that it's okay to check more than one type of loan if they're kind of going back and forth between it. You know, too much information does not seem to be a violation. You know, I honestly can see value in using this one here. We're trying to nail down the buyers. I mean, even though I know it's uncomfortable for most of us thinking we're going to have to get buyers into this kind of agreement so early in our relationship with them. It should make our buyers even better clients if it's handled right. Because the tire kickers who are just trying to waste your time on the final Sunday of their 4-month stay out here in the desert, and they're finally going to squeeze the time, and we're thinking about it, and don't worry, and yes, they're starting up their car and taking away, right? And we never hear from them again. If they're not willing to go through some of this stuff, they're showing their cards early, and what the relationship is. So personally, I would do this as a follow-up. And even if I did show them out, and even if they did sign one of the showing agreements or buyer broker agreements, and then I called them up and yeah, we kind of changed our mind. I know 3 days later, when I call them up on this form on Tuesday after showing them on Sunday, it's like, well, that was a waste of 4 hours, but okay, next. Right? Okay, and so that gets us through the buyer situations right there. Most buyer situations, not the open house ones. We'll talk about it again here in a minute. Okay, let's take a look right now at the California residential, the listing agreement. Or actually, we should do the purchase agreement. Closure modification. Spell it. I don't see the. Showing. I think this is it. Purchase agreement. Okay, so we've taken the buyer out, shown them some houses. They signed up with the buyer broker agreement or whatever form they did. They find a home, they love it. Okay. The top part of this form is exactly like what we're used to, right? We've got the name of the buyers, the date, the property address, the APN, who the agents and their brokerages are on each side. We roll into price. Okay. We talk about their initial deposit they're going to put in, a little bit about the type of loan that they're going to do, basically showing how it's going to be paid for. And then it's at the top of page 2. This is where the new rules kick in, right there at the top. Now, this is not exactly our commission, but this is pretty darn close. Seller credit, if any, to buyer. This part was already in the last one, but this is where if the seller is going to pay any closing costs, we put this into the purchase agreement. But look at box G318. Seller agrees to pay the obligation of buyer to compensate buyer's broker under a separate agreement. Okay, that was in last year's contract too, but it didn't carry the same weight that it does now. Now that's exactly who's going to pay what commission. Okay, is the seller contributing to buyer's broker agreement? Okay. See attached form SPBB, that's seller payment of buyer's broker. That's the form that's going to go to escrow. Okay. And that's the form that you want the seller to sign, which says how much they're going to pay. I think it's here. Seller payment to buyer's broker. That's the form where they say they're going to pay whatever percentage to your commission. Right there. That's the form. Escrow is going to ask for this form and your buyer broker agreement. Okay, because you're not allowed to get paid more than what's in your buyer broker agreement, right? So escrow is going to look at those two forms to see if they match. If the seller payments to buyer broker is less, okay, no, yeah, if the seller's payment to buyer's broker is less than what your buyer broker agreement is, escrow is going to ask, how are we making up the difference? And that's where it's going to be either added to the buyer's closing costs, okay, or they're going to be coming in with cash. Because if it's added to the buyer's closing costs and we don't have a ton of seller contribution or of seller paying escrow fees, it can probably be rolled in to their closing costs for their loan. Under most loans, they're going to be allowed to do that. Okay, but escrow will be double checking that it can be. As agents, we have to get more and more savvy about what loans qualify to have our commission rolled into it. And that will be a subject of our meeting next week when we're having our team meeting. So we'll have either Kristen or Denise here and talking about that, because I'm sure that's going to be the subject for every brokerage team meeting across the country, okay, in the weeks ahead. So this is the form once we've negotiated, or as we're negotiating what is going to be paid. This thing, residential, okay. And then after that, it becomes the same form that we're used to. Okay, so I really don't have to go through this whole form, but it's just really those two sections there at the top of page 2 that pertain to the new rules. You guys with me so far? Because I'm moving on. We're getting through this. The listing agreement. Yeah, the listing agreement. Okay. Same as before. Date, who's the parties to the listing, what's the address to the property, how long is the listing for, the price it's going to be. Okay, and then we get to section C, compensation. Bold print, the amount of real estate commission is not fixed by law. They are set by each broker individually. Okay, so that's right there in bold print now. Notice that we have the compensation to seller's broker. This is the amount for the listing agent. How much do we want? I'd like 3%. I've had some agents joke, well, I'm just going to ask for it all. I'm going to go for 6%. Look, if you can get it, get it. But you are not allowed to share your commission with the buyer's agent anymore. No more after August 17th can we pay money from the selling agent to the listing agent. That is a violation of the law. So put down what you're going to get there. If they're going to pay you a bonus, if you can sell it by September, put it there. You deserve your bonus. I'm on box C, page 1. Okay, but this is only for you. Okay, on this. This is not anything to be shared with the other agent. Now, this is a category next. We're going to look at section C2 that was not in the previous one, but the DRE believes this is going to be a growing category of buyer in the future. Unrepresented buyers coming forward, going straight to the listing agent because they feel they can shave off whatever commission would have gone to the buyer's agent and be levied against their price in their favor. Right? Well, I don't need representation. I'm okay. I had an interesting conversation with Carlo this morning because he's been through like 3 or 4 of the car webinars on how these forms work. And the car legal attorney who hosted his this morning said, be wary of that. Because if they really want to be unrepresented, say, okay, bring me an offer. Make sure you do it on the proper form. And they're going to go, what? Because most of them aren't even going to think to go down to Staples or right or Office Max or wherever and buy or go on Amazon and look for purchase agreements that they can buy. Most of them are just going to go, huh? And they say, yep. And when it comes time to do your inspections, make sure I'm going to need it on a proper form for that there, and make sure and hold to the time frames. Um, okay, how do I do that, folks? I'm not representing you. I'd be happy to represent you for my fee, which is not cumbersome, but I do deserve a fee for that. That's what I do for a living. And I'd be happy to watch out for your interest in this transaction, or I can recommend an agent who will do that if you would rather it be somebody else. But if you are truly going to be unrepresented, then I need you to represent yourself. Pretty heavy line to draw on somebody, right? And we want to sell our seller's home. But if we don't do that, we are going to take on the liability of the buyer while we represent the seller. If we say, well, here, I'll help you on this one, let's make the offer. At that point, they've got your name, their name on a form, writing in the special terms that they are not represented. Again, your E&O will not cover you because it says that they are not represented, and yet they're going to say, well, I know they said that, but they were saying this and that and a lot of things while we were doing it. FISBO, same thing. Yeah, same thing. It's like if you want to be unrepresented, then go represent yourself. Abraham Lincoln did not turn to the prosecuting attorney while he was defending some lumberjack and say, hey, would you fill out this form for me while you're doing that? Right? If you're sitting in court and you decide to represent yourself, I don't care if it's for a traffic ticket or a murder, you can't turn to the prosecuting attorney and say, would you mind just showing me how you fill out that form so I can submit it to the court on how I do an objection? They're going to say, if you're going to represent yourself, Mr. Meeks, you know what they say about an attorney who represents himself and what kind of client they have. Well, we kind of have to find that same verbiage because there's going to be, the DRE believes, enough people coming forward trying to say that they're unrepresented that that's going to be a category. So at the very least, you want to tell your seller, if somebody is unrepresented, I want something extra. Because I'm going to have greater E&O. It doesn't matter. I'm going to have to do all the paperwork for both sides, and I'm going to have legal liability if we can work that out. I would rather not take them at all, but I don't want to stop you from selling your home if that's the direction we have to go. So therefore, I feel I'm owed another 2% if I have to represent the buyer, even if they try to say they're unrepresented. And when it comes to negotiating the contract, I will make sure and protect your financial interest. I'm not going to let them get full value for the unrepresentedness. Okay. Continuation of right to compensation for broker identified prospective buyers. This is that same kind of list at the end of your listing agreement. It's always been there. You run your 6 months or whatever you had on the listing agreement. It didn't sell, unfortunately, for whatever reason. And you have to produce a list of the people that you really showed the home to and what their names were so you can be protected on them. This is what I mentioned on the other one. Where can I do it here? I have always put 365 days in that box. I look at people right in the eye and say, yeah, I'm protected for a year on that buyer. One time, I had somebody throw a fuss. And I said, okay. And we settled on 90 days. Every other deal, 1 year. Seller obligation to pay previous brokers. This was in the other forms too. I'm not sure it was stated exactly like that in it, but did your last agent that you have provide you a list of anybody that they're protected on? You know, have you made an agreement with anybody else that you owe them anything on this property? Do you have a cousin who's a realtor, right, that you've made a promise to because they've been helping you along? No, if they've made, you have to see that agreement in order to know what. Well, yeah, but no, the seller should already have it. Now, if you are within 5 days of the expiration and you're getting the listing already, then you just got to be ready for that list to come forward within 5 days. Yes, but you should at least be able to put the name of the realtor that might be providing it. Go with the information you have. Okay. After that, it gets pretty normal for a while. Items included, items excluded, leased items, all of that there. I don't think there's any for to take or use photographs. Yeah, that's it on that one there. So once you get through that section C, you've done it now. But notice there's one significant field missing that used to be in the other document, the other listing agreement. Nowhere does it say what the seller is going to pay the buyer's agent. Okay, so if you wanted to put that in there, and I do recommend having that conversation, I would go to additional terms. Okay. To continue purchase replacement. No, I would go to additional terms and I would write it there, but I would be favorable to my seller. Because the way these negotiations are going to be is that they should not be locked in to guarantee a percentage to the buyer's agent, no matter what. Okay, now I would say seller to pay up to 3% buyer's agent commission, depending upon price. I would have at the most something like that. Okay. I think to put in seller to pay 3% buyer's agent commission, this goes against the spirit of the settlement. And if I were on the receiving end of a phone call when I had the home listed and the agent on the other end said, "Hey, is your seller going to work with me on a commission for this?" My answer would be, depends on the price. Well, what's your seller willing to pay? Well, he's told me that he would pay 2 or 3%, but it's got to be full price or above. Right? I mean, I really don't want to show all my cards. And he says, "Well, I don't know if my buyer's going to do it." I'd say, tell you what, just put whatever your buyer wants to do in the offer and show it to us. He's willing to work with you, but he's not going to pay your commission, a request for repairs, all your buyer's closing costs, give you a bonus, and then give you his dog too. He's just not going to do it. So let me see what it is. I've told you a little bit, but beyond that there, I'm not negotiating your commission before I negotiate the price for my seller. And if they say, "Well, I'm not showing your house," then I say, then you're violating your ethics code to your buyer. What's your name again? And what's your license? They say, "Yeah, Pee Wee Herman." And hang up. Yeah, whatever. They'd make it up. But honestly, even when I said there they do 2 or 3%, I'm probably yielding a little bit of my negotiating strength earlier than I need to right there. The best answer is, look, they're willing to cooperate, but show us an offer. Okay, we're not trying to shaft anybody. I know what most agents want. I've got a good seller here. Show me an offer. And then they're going to give you an offer at 2.5 or 3%, right? They're gonna be in the same boat on the other side that we are with buyers. So, I mean, to me, it's not too much hardball, but it's how the negotiations are going to go. And I've got to do my best to represent whichever client I'm representing in the transaction. In this case, I'm describing the seller. You guys with me out there? Arthur, you got all this? Okay. Yeah, Carmen. I would. I would write some, as a matter of fact, I've got to write one of these today or tomorrow. Well, I'm sorry, say it again. What? Oh, percentage. Oh, I'm sorry. it would be okay to me. Seller to pay, like I say, seller to pay up to 3%, towards buyer's agent commission. Because it's not going to go in the MLS. Okay, this is not an IDX feed. Okay, and it is okay for your seller to communicate with you clearly what they want to do to sell their home. I can't see how that could ever be argued against. Or I believe to do otherwise, we'd be price fixing against the sellers, right? I mean, shouldn't a seller be allowed to offer a bonus on somebody if they'd sell their house by Thursday? I would think that's a legal thing, you know.
When you get to it, it's supposed to be the same store,
Right, if there's a referral fee, you would put in there. Okay, additional, anything to do with the commissions that's not addressed anywhere else should absolutely be on. You're right, we did that on one of yours, yeah, I think it was yesterday, when we did it. If there's a referral fee or anything else, the buyers in the lawsuit that created this felt that they were being underrepresented and under disclosed to about what the realtors were making. And so we're supposed to now work under the spirit of resolving that. Okay, so we just went through listing. So far, we've covered the buyer broker situation. We've covered the purchase agreement. Now we've done the listing agreement. There's only one left, and that's the open house. Let me see here. Did I leave that in the voluntary? I did. Okay. Copy. Let's open that up. I'll save this to the other section. The question that a lot of agents want to know is, how do I handle an open house? Okay, under all these rules, how do I just like open the door and let people come in and I don't know who any of them are? There is a rule along with all these others, more of a guideline, really. No, it's a rule. Um, a listing agent can show their own property to anybody without a written agreement. So if it's your own listing, you can show it to anyone. And even if you are an agent working for the listing agent, you are by default working for the seller when you do it. Now, you're going to want to try to get people's information to represent them on the buyer broker. And you can have those conversations. But I would recommend you take this form and post it at least by the front door, have it laying on a table by the front door, and probably tape it to whatever is your best window in the house with the best view or by the kitchen, so that, and go around and snap a couple pictures of it up. Really prove that you've done this. Again, heaven forbid the secret shopper. I know I've mentioned them before, and they're probably a 1 out of a million shot, right? But we got to protect ourselves. But this form, if you look at what it says, visitor intention to view the property. Agent is holding an open house or conducting in-person or live virtual tour of the property identified above. Visitor is interested in viewing. Agent agrees to show property to visitor on the following terms. Agent does not represent visitor. Communication with agent at open house property tour is for the benefit of the seller. Communication with agent are not confidential. Anything you say can and will be used against you for the benefit of the seller, unless you want to hire me as your realtor, right? Then I'm willing to look at this in a different way. We're allowed to say that to them. Okay. If visitor writes an offer on the property through the agent, at that time, agent will disclose if agent and agent's broker represent the seller exclusively or both the seller and the visitor. We have to disclose them at the time that we are writing an offer if we have not done it prior to that. Okay. And if visitor wants to be represented by the agent holding the open house, visitor should sign a representation agreement. And it says they can do either the buyer broker or the property showing representation agreement, either one. But I mean, And you should have some of those around, because what if you're doing an open house? I really don't like this one. I wanted one with a pool, and that kitchen's kind of stinky. I don't like the yellow flowers all over the place. Did you see the one over on Main Street, just 2 blocks over? And there's another one over on Walnut. I could take you to show you those at 3 o'clock today if you want to do them. They're locked up, but I saw that they were available for you to do today. Really? Okay. Here, just sign this property showing and representation agreement. Okay, and I'd be happy to do that for you. What? We have to sign something? Folks, it's the law. You're going to hear it from every agent. I am happy to take you and show you those homes, but I do have to know, and my wife would kill me if I didn't do this. If I show you those homes and you love it, can I be the guy who writes the offer? That's what this is all about. What's that?
The house.
Well, I said Walnut and I said whatever. And they might just drive over there at that point, and we'll get better at our verbiage on it. There's one a couple blocks away, whatever, but I'd probably tell them that much, because to me, you have to give a little to get a little, and being honest and fairly open is just the way I do business. And if there's a little slop that falls off the table, the liars and cheaters of the world, I probably would have had another problem with them later in some other fashion. Yeah. But this form right here does allow you to show any property that you're holding an open house, but also realize this: you can have somebody called you on the phone and said, Fernando, your listing that you took yesterday, I forget what street it's on Mission Street. Okay. So Fernando gets a call on Mission Street. Somebody wants to see the property. I've got a brother up in Santa Barbara who's my agent. Can you just let me in and show me the property? Sure. Sign this one here. It says that I'm only representing the seller. Can I get your brother's name up in Santa Barbara? It doesn't have a spot down here, agent, if any, and a phone number. I'd sure like to give him a call and follow up. Well, he's not a close brother. Really? Okay. But again, we can use these forms to our advantage to weed out a little bit of the BS and figure if the people are telling us the truth or not. They might just lie to us and tell us, yes, his name is Elmer Fudd and his phone number is 555-5555. But, we're not checking IDs here. We're just trying to comply with the law. So anyways, that's it. We went over the buyer broker agreement, the property showing agreement, the buyer personal information, financial information form. Then we looked at the purchase agreement. Did I say purchase? Showing agreement, buyer broker, purchase agreement, listing agreement, and now the open house. We just went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of, oh yeah. And the one that guarantees you get paid, the seller payment to buyer's broker form, which is what you have to turn in to escrow with your deal, only though if you want to get paid. If you don't want to get paid, don't worry about turning it in. But if you do want to get paid, I would do it. That's it. Any questions from anybody else? How do we do on time? Less than an hour and a half. Okay. It's like a timeshare presentation. And I have a lovely parting gift for you downstairs. Our front desk will get that for you on the way out, unless, of course, you want to sign up for the tour again next year. Okay. Thank you. Looks like that's all the questions. I appreciate you guys coming in. Okay. I'll talk to you some other time. Bye-bye.